The phone rang during my evening yoga session. I was deep in the middle of a warrior pose, focusing on my breathing, trying to calm my mind. I had been working on my balance and inner peace. But the sudden ringing of my phone shattered the quiet like a brick smashing through glass. My stomach tightened instantly. I knew, without even looking at the screen, that it was Jasper calling. He never calls me during his mother's sacred dinner time. That was when I knew something was wrong. I answered the call, feeling uneasy. "Hello, Nina. I need you to go stay with my mom," Jasper's voice said quickly, and I could tell something was serious. Grandma Vera fell and broke her leg. Mom's really upset. My heart sank, not because of Vera's injury, but because I knew exactly what that meant. I had worked as a professional caregiver for 3 years before I married Jasper, and now his mother would expect those skills for free. I thought about the hours I spent looking after other people's loved ones, and the way I tried to build a life for myself. Now, it seemed like all that would be thrown aside, as I'd be expected to care for Vera the way I used to care for clients. I took a deep breath. What about the home health aide? Does she need me right away? I asked, trying to find another way out. Jasper sighed. She was fired last week. Something about stealing silverware, he said, dismissing the issue like it was nothing. I really need you to do this. I'll be tied up with a work merger for at least 2 weeks. You're not working right now anyway. His words stung. Not working, as if taking care of our home and managing his social calendar wasn't work. But that was how it was. I had always been expected to manage everything, but it didn't seem like anyone saw the value in what I did. Jasper, your mom and I hesitated, trying to explain. You know how things are between us. She doesn't like me. She's family, Nina. Jasper interrupted. Just do this for me, okay? It'll only be for a little while. The way he said family made my stomach churn. The same woman who had called me a gold digger at our wedding reception. The same one who spent years telling Jasper I wasn't good enough for him. It was always about her. And now, she was asking me to put everything on hold again. Fine, I said, biting back my frustration. When do they need me? I've already told her you're coming tonight, Jasper replied, his voice flat. I hung up, feeling smaller and smaller with every word. The woman staring back at me in the mirror as I quickly packed my bag wasn't the confident person I had worked so hard to become. I thought I had left this kind of feeling behind, but here I was, again, at Clara Carter Mitchell's beck and call. I packed 2 weeks' worth of clothes, grabbed my laptop, and took my anxiety medication just in case. The drive to the Carter Mitchell estate took 40 minutes, each mile adding more dread to my already heavy heart. When the mansion came into view, with its giant columns and perfectly manicured gardens, I knew I was walking into another trap. I could already picture Clara standing in the doorway, her silver hair always flawless, her posture as rigid as a soldier's. As soon as I got out of the car, Clara was there as expected, waiting for me. No thank you, no hello, she said curtly as usual. Mother's been asking for her pain medication for the past hour. I forced a smile, trying not to show how angry I was. I followed her inside. The house smelled of furniture polish and old money, an odor I had grown all too familiar with over the years. Clara led me upstairs, clicking her heels on the marble floor. Vera is in the guest room, Clara said coldly. I've had the staff move her upstairs. You'll stay in the adjoining room and monitor her at night. Make sure she gets enough rest. I'll need to see the doctor's care plan, I said, trying to take control of the situation. Clara barely glanced at me. It's all in her room. Honestly, Nina, I expected you to get here sooner. A proper daughter-in-law would have come immediately. My hands clenched around my bag. I was trying to keep calm, but everything about the situation felt wrong. I came as soon as Jasper called, I said, feeling my patience slip away. Clara stopped in front of Vera's door. Do try to keep her quiet. I have the garden club coming tomorrow, and I can't have her moaning disrupting my meeting. Before I could respond, She turned and clicked away down the hall, leaving me standing in the doorway. I opened the door and walked inside. Vera lay in bed, her eyes closed, looking weaker than I remembered. But something wasn't right. Her supposed broken leg was resting on top of the covers, and I knew from my years of experience that the position was all wrong. I stepped closer, and her eyes snapped open, locking onto mine. "Hello, dear," Vera said softly, her voice a bit raspy. "I was wondering when they drag you into this mess." That's when I knew. This wasn't about a broken leg. There was something much more complicated going on here. Vera wasn't just injured. She was playing a game, and I had just been pulled into it. "Close the door," she whispered, patting the bed beside her. "I need to tell you something important." I closed the door, my heart pounding. Whatever Vera was about to tell me, I knew it would change everything. For the next 3 days, I stayed at the Carter Mitchell estate. During that time, I witnessed 4 major arguments between Clara and Vera, each one more intense than the last. Clara would argue with Vera about the smallest things, like not eating her breakfast. But when I checked, I saw that Vera had eaten just an hour ago. "You're not eating enough," Clara would say sharply, hovering over Vera like a hawk. "I'm paying you to ensure she eats properly." I would try to defend Vera, but Clara always dismissed me. "You're not paid for your opinions, dear," she'd say. Then there were the phone calls from Jasper. Every time he called, it was to check on me, not because he cared about how I was doing, but because his mother had been complaining about me. I stopped answering after a while. His mother had him under her control, and I wasn't going to keep playing her game. On the 4th day, I was taking Vera's blood pressure when Clara snapped at me. "You're undermining my authority in my own house," she said coldly. "Maybe you should leave if you can't follow simple instructions." I stood up, pushing my chair back. "Vera needs rest, Clara, not to be paraded around for your friends." Clara's face went cold, and she turned on her heels, walking out without saying another word. I turned to Vera, and she gave me a reassuring smile. "Don't let her get to you," she said. "She's always been threatened by strong women." She drove Oliver away, and now she's trying to do the same to you. My heart sank. Vera was right. Jasper was beginning to believe whatever his mother said, just like his father had. The man I had married was slowly slipping away, and I was afraid I was losing him. Later that night, Jasper called again. This time, I answered, stepping into the hallway so I could speak privately. "Where have you been?" he demanded. "Mom says you're being impossible." "I'm taking care of your grandmother like you asked," I said, my voice trembling. "But I'm not going to let your mother use her like a showpiece for her social gatherings." "She knows best," Jasper replied, his voice flat and tired. "Just do what she says, please." The line went dead before I could respond. When I returned to Vera's room, she was sitting up in bed, looking more alert. "Close the door, dear," she said, her voice now steady and serious. "It's time I tell you what's really going on in this house." My heart raced. I closed the door, knowing that what Vera was about to say would change everything. Later that evening, after the garden club had left, Vera finally showed me the truth. As soon as the house was empty, she asked me to help her sit up. I noticed that her broken leg was no longer a problem. She stood up, stretching like nothing had happened. "You've been lying to everyone," I said, shocked. "What's going on here?" Vera looked at me, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "Clara is not the only one who can play games, dear." And just like that, everything changed. I finally understood what was happening and what I had to do next. Vera reached for a folder on her table. She wanted to see if I was any different from the others, if I had the courage to help her fix the mess her family had become. She opened the folder, showing papers with information about property, bank statements, and legal documents. "Did you know this house isn't really Clara's?" "It's mine," she said. My throat felt dry. "Does Jasper know?" I asked. Vera nodded. "Jasper knows what his mother tells him, just like he knows about you and Oliver. The mention of Oliver made my stomach feel tight. Vera went on. Oliver was always stronger than Clara. That's why she drove him away. She couldn't control him like she controls Jasper. Just then, someone knocked on the door. Clara came in without waiting, smiling as if she had won something. "What are you doing still awake, Leilani? I told you to rest." She stopped when she saw the papers on the table. "What are those?" she asked. Vera quickly hid the folder under her blanket. "Just reading," Vera said. "Leilani's been helping me organize my affairs." Clara's face turned hard. "I handle all the family papers. You handle what I allow you to handle." Then Vera said something that shocked me, "Just like you handled Oliver's inheritance." Clara's face went pale. Vera continued, "I know about the forged documents and the missing trust fund. You didn't think I'd find out." My phone buzzed. It was Jasper again. I ignored it, watching what was happening. Clara said, "Everything I did was for the family, to keep us together and in control. I couldn't hold back." "Just like you're trying to control my marriage," I said. Clara snapped back, but Vera stopped her. "Enough," she said, standing up quickly and making Clara step back. Then she said calmly, "You may have controlled a lot of things, but you can't control me anymore. I'm changing my will." Clara looked shocked. She stared at Vera, her calm expression cracking. "Leilani," she said sweetly, "maybe it's time you went home to Jasper. He misses you." But Vera wasn't having it. "She's not going anywhere," she said. "She's exactly where she needs to be. Now leave." After Clara left, slamming the door, Vera leaned back in her chair. "That was fun," she said, tapping the folder. "Now, let's talk about how to really shake things up." I thought about Jasper, who probably still believed everything his mother told him about me and Oliver. I thought about my dignity, slowly disappearing in this house, trapped in all these lies. "Yes," I said, "let's shake things up." Vera smiled. "Good, because what I'm about to tell you could either save this family or break it completely. Are you ready for that?" I thought about everything, the lies, the betrayal, and my own feelings. "I'm ready," I said. "Let's do this." A little later, Jasper showed up at midnight, smelling like alcohol and his mother's control. I found him in Vera's sitting room, looking through her drawers. "What are you doing?" I whispered. He jumped, almost dropping some papers. "I'm looking for proof," he said, his words slurring. "Mother says you and grandmother are plotting something." I stepped closer, noticing the papers in front of him. "Does she know you're here?" I asked. "Of course she knows," Jasper replied, trying to reach for me, but I stepped back. "You've changed since coming here," I said quietly. The room was quiet except for the ticking of a clock. Jasper had taken off his tie, and his hair was messy. He looked lost. "Oliver called me today," he said suddenly. "He asked about you. He said he's coming home." I froze. "Oliver?" I thought, feeling a knot in my stomach. Jasper laughed bitterly. "Funny timing, right? Right when you and grandmother start acting strange." Before I could say anything, the lights turned on. Vera stood in the doorway, looking strong, even though she had been hurt earlier. "This is disappointing but not surprising," she said. Jasper stepped back, shocked. "You're walking?" he asked. "Mother said..." "Your mother says a lot of things," Vera cut him off. "Like how she protected you from the truth about your father's death." Jasper's face went pale. "What do you mean about Dad?" he asked. Vera was serious. "I know what happened to your father. The medication change, the accident, the insurance money. It all saved the family from going broke. Your mother's lies helped her stay in control." Jasper couldn't believe it. "Mother would never do that," he said, slamming his fist on the desk. But Vera was calm. "She did," she said. "And now she sent you here to spy on us and protect her secrets." "I came to protect my wife," Jasper said, his voice shaking. "You're right about one thing," I said, my voice strong. "You haven't protected me from anything. Not from your mother's insults, or her threats, or her private investigators. Jasper looked confused. You're trying to turn everyone against me, he said. But I replied, no, I'm trying to turn them against her. Just then, Clara's voice cut through the tension. You're trying to destroy our family, just like Oliver did. My phone buzzed. It was Oliver. Don't trust anyone. Almost there. Jasper stood up straight, still wanting to please his mother. Grandmother's been lying about her injury, he said. I know, Clara replied coldly. And I also know you've been talking to my lawyer about the will. This house is mine. Everything is mine. She pulled out a piece of paper and smiled. I signed this morning. Mother's been declared mentally incompetent. I'm her legal guardian now. Everything seemed to tilt. I grabbed the desk to keep myself steady. You can't do this, I said, but Clara smiled. I already have. Then she said, you have a choice now, Leilani. You can stay and support your husband or leave with nothing. If you choose wrong, I'll tell everyone about your affair with Oliver. I felt a cold chill. There was no affair, I whispered. Prove it, Clara said. Jasper will believe me. Jasper stood there, watching me, waiting for me to say something. My phone buzzed again. Then there were footsteps in the hall. Everything was about to change. Oliver walked in, standing tall with a briefcase. He didn't look like the man who left 5 years ago. Behind him was a woman in a suit, carrying a leather portfolio like a lawyer. Clara smirked. You're too late. I've already won, she said. But Oliver smiled back. Have you, he asked. Then he turned to Vera. Show them. Vera pulled out her phone and played a recording. It was Clara's voice clearly saying, just change the medication dosage. No one will question it. It worked with Samuel. It will work with Mother. Jasper's face went pale. What is this? He asked. Evidence, the lawyer said. Evidence of attempted murder, among other things. I felt my hands shake as I reached for the desk to steady myself. All those times when I was scared, when I didn't know what was happening, I finally understood. The truth was out. Clara always said she needed to take care of Vera's medicine because of all the dizzy spells she kept having. But it wasn't what it seemed. Clara looked a little nervous as she spoke. I was trying to protect our family's name. I didn't want people to know the truth about how I made your husband disappear. Oliver shouted back, You hurt your family, Clara. You made up lies and stole what should have been mine. You're weak, just like your father. Clara yelled at him. This family needs strength to survive. No, I said, standing up. This family needs the truth to survive. Then Jasper stepped in between us. He looked unsteady, like he wasn't sure what was happening. Oliver, you can't trust those recordings, he said. But Oliver interrupted. Neither do the financial records or the autopsy report of your father. A lawyer opened up a folder and said, We have enough proof to charge her with a crime, but we can talk about other options. Jasper turned to me and asked, Nina, what have you done? I answered, I did what I had to do. I protected the truth. Vera stood up straight, no longer looking weak. She said to Clara, You have one choice. Give up control of the estate to me and leave the company, or we send these recordings to the police. Clara looked scared but tried to hold it together. You wouldn't dare, she said. But Clara's hands were shaking as she held the papers. Jasper looked at me and finally asked, Did you know about Father? You suspected it. I needed proof, I whispered. Sign the papers, Mother, Oliver said, pulling out some documents. The clock in the room rang 1 o'clock. It felt like everything was changing. Clara's face showed it. She had spent her whole life hiding secrets, and now the truth was coming out. Clara grabbed a pen and signed the papers with a sigh. It sounded like victory, but as I watched Jasper face fall and Oliver look hurt, I realized that revenge wasn't as sweet as I thought. It was messy and complicated. Get out, Vera said once the papers were signed. Both of you. Clara tried to stand tall, but she was defeated. "This isn't over," she said as they walked out, leaving Jasper behind, looking lost. Oliver turned to me and asked, "Are you okay?" "No, nothing about this is okay," I answered. But there was something lighter in my heart, knowing the truth was finally out. It felt like I could breathe again. "What now?" I asked Vera. She smiled a little, tired but happy. "Now we rebuild. But first, I think we could all use a drink." As we were having a drink, a door slammed somewhere in the house, and I realized that the family was breaking apart. What we had planned had worked, but it felt sad instead of happy. 3 days later, Jasper came to my door with divorce papers and a restraining order against me. "Mother isn't finished," he said. "She's claiming we abused Grandma." I looked at the papers. The recordings we had used couldn't be used in court. Clara's lawyers had found a way to twist everything. "She killed your father," I whispered. "She's protecting the family," Jasper answered bitterly. He handed me the papers again. "Sign them, Nina. Walk away before she ruins you too." Then my phone buzzed. It was Vera, but I hadn't been answering her calls. She was in trouble, too. "Do you know what she did was wrong?" Jasper asked, but his voice was broken. "Wrong," I repeated, feeling dizzy. Jasper started talking about photos his mother had of me with Oliver, trying to make it look like something bad was going on between us. Before I could respond, I heard the doorbell ring. I looked out the window and saw 2 police cars. Jasper stepped back, and I understood. "What did you do?" I asked. "I'm sorry," Jasper said, but his eyes were cold. "Mother is pressing charges. They're here for you." Vera's voice came through on the phone. "They're taking the house. Everything is frozen until the investigation is over." I looked at Jasper as the police came to my door. They had a warrant for my arrest. I was taken to the police station. The officers treated me like a criminal. My lawyers seemed tired already, and things didn't look good. They had a strong case, and the evidence we had couldn't help us. Clara was winning. Then my lawyer's phone buzzed. Oliver was arrested trying to leave the country, and Vera was sent to a psychiatric hospital. Everything was falling apart. "What do we do?" I asked. The lawyer sighed. "We take the deal. Plead guilty to a smaller charge, and agree never to contact the family again. If not, well, it's not going to be easy." Through the window, I saw Jasper walking past, but he didn't look at me. I knew it was over. Later, I visited Vera in the hospital. She looked smaller, but her eyes still showed strength. "They found the real autopsy report," she whispered. "The one Clara tried to hide. Oliver's lawyer has it." Just then, Clara walked in, with Jasper behind her. "I'm giving you one last chance," Clara said, sitting down. "Admit that you used my mother for money, and all charges will disappear." I felt sick. Then Vera said something shocking. "You killed my son-in-law." Clara looked surprised, but she didn't back down. "I protected this family." Jasper spoke for the first time. His voice was rough. "You destroyed this family, and I let you." Then Jasper pulled out a small USB drive. "Father gave me this before the accident," he said. "I never looked at it until now." He put it on the table. "It's over, Mother." The police walked in, and I realized Jasper had tricked Clara. He had already sent copies of the evidence to the district attorney. Clara's face went pale. "No, Jasper, don't do this," she begged. But it was too late. The truth was finally out. The police, the lawyers, and witnesses filled the room. Jasper had set everything up. The game was over. Clara stood, watching her world fall apart. "Everything I did was for this family, for you boys, for our name," she shouted. "Our name is poisoned because of you." Jasper laughed bitterly. The police moved forward, ready to put handcuffs on her. Clara's face twisted with anger. "You ungrateful," she screamed as she tried to grab the USB drive, but Vera was faster. Clara and her elderly mother, Agnes, started fighting over the table. Years of anger and bad feelings exploded into a struggle. "Enough!" I shouted, pulling Clara away. She turned and scratched my face with her sharp nails. The police quickly grabbed her as she yelled all kinds of accusations and threats. One of the police officers said, "Mrs. Carter Mitchell, you're under arrest for the murder of Samuel Gray, for trying to hurt Agnes Carter, and for trying to trick people with fraud." As they led her away, she turned around one last time. "I made this family what it is," she said. Vera stood tall and said, "No, you destroyed what it was. Now, we'll rebuild it into something better." Jasper gently touched my cheek, which was bleeding. "I'm sorry for everything," he said. I pulled away from his touch. Some things can never be fixed. Oliver helped Vera get back into her house, but she told him to stop and stood up by herself. She was old and frail, but for the first time in a long time, she stood strong. Vera looked at our broken family and said, "Shall we go home?" The real work of healing was just beginning. I watched Clara being taken away in handcuffs. Her perfect life had been shattered. Revenge didn't feel like victory. It felt like the truth, bitter but necessary, and it set me free. That afternoon, Jasper signed the divorce papers. Oliver helped Vera move back into her house. I left the Carter Mitchell fortune, taking only my dignity and the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes justice happens, even if it's not what you expect. The Carter Mitchell mansion was sold at an auction. I watched strangers take away all the family treasures, antiques, portraits, and memories. It felt like the end of an era. Oliver stood beside me. "Vera's waiting at the new place," he said. The new nursing home Vera had chosen was bright and modern, unlike the old mansion that was full of secrets. "I wanted to be somewhere that smells fresh, not full of old lies," she had said. Before I went inside, I touched the iron gates one last time. It was my way of saying goodbye to the past, the misery and the person I used to be. Jasper had sent me one last letter before leaving for Europe, but I never opened it. Some questions aren't worth answering. I left it on my kitchen counter, next to the divorce papers. At the nursing home, Vera was in the garden, teaching the other residents her favorite card game. "You're late," she called out. "I've already won 3 hands and lost 2. Her opponent laughed. "Don't believe her. She's not as good as she says." Vera winked and said, "I'm exactly as sharp as I need to be. I know when these two are avoiding the truth." Oliver stood next to me. We had been careful not to show our growing feelings for each other, but Vera saw everything. She always had. The prosecutor called. I said, "Changing the subject. They want us both to testify next month." Vera dealt another hand. "It's time everyone knows the truth. All of it. Even the parts that make us look bad." She smiled. "Real justice isn't about looking good. It's about being honest." The evening sun made everything look golden, and I remember the first night at the mansion. I had come looking for something inside myself, but instead, I found strength, family, and truth in all its messy glory. "There's something for you," Oliver said later, as we walked through the garden. He handed me the USB drive. "There's more on here. Things about Father, about our family's history, things you might not want to know." I stopped walking. "Before what?" I asked. "Before you decide if you want any part of this family's future. A year ago, I would have grabbed that drive, eager to know more secrets, to use them against the family. But now I felt tired of looking back, tired of the revenge and the cycle of hurting each other." "Keep it," I said. "Some stories don't need to be told. As for us, our story isn't over yet." I left the USB drive on Vera's nightstand, next to her favorite photos. One of Samuel at his hunting cabin, one of Oliver and Jasper when they were kids, and a new one of all of us in the garden. I let her decide which secrets should be shared and which should stay hidden. The next morning, I found the USB drive in my mailbox with a note attached. "The past is a lesson, not a prison. Now, go make some trouble of your own." Oliver was waiting for me in the parking lot, holding 2 coffee cups. "Vera says you're off today. We have her blessing to be scandalous." I thought about revenge, about justice, and about how healing doesn't always look the way we expect. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't destroying what hurt you, it's building something better from the ruins. Scandalous sounds perfect, I said, taking the coffee. But first, I need to check on my favorite troublemaker. Through the window, I could see Vera setting up her card table. She was already drawing a crowd. Some stories end with a bang, I thought. But ours ended with a shuffle of cards and the quiet certainty that sometimes, just sometimes, karma gets it right. If this story resonated with you or sparked new thoughts, I'd love to hear your perspective. Please share your insights in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe to stay connected and never miss our upcoming videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.